What if the person you live with isn't who they claim to be? Jessica thought her life was perfect, but one unexpected encounter with an elderly woman changed everything. Who was she, and why did her words terrify Jessica's husband so much? I kindly ask you to listen until the end, give a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel, as your attention helps the channel grow and allows me to create new and interesting stories. Thank you. The smell of freshly baked pie and the aromas of festive dishes filled the spacious kitchen. Jessica, despite her privileges and high social status, was in the middle of cooking. She loved the process. For her, it was a way to express care and love. Today, her husband Michael was turning 40, and she wanted everything to be perfect. "You're your own personal chef, Jessica," joked her assistant, watching as she skillfully worked with dough and sauces. "With your life, you should be relaxing in a chair and just looking beautiful." "Oh, please. Cooking is my joy," Jessica laughed. And today, when the dishes were all ready, Jessica left the kitchen to ensure everything else was on schedule. The guests had already started gathering. Laughter and toasts filled the room. Jessica's husband, Michael, was glowing under all the attention. He was a successful entrepreneur, charismatic and confident. Jessica was proud of him and believed they had built the perfect marriage. But the evening's usual rhythm was broken by an unexpected knock at the kitchen door. It was a firm knock, and Jessica, slightly puzzled, went to open it. Standing at the doorway was an elderly woman. Her old coat looked worn, and her boots were covered in snow. The woman's face was red from the cold, and she was shivering as if she had been standing outside for hours. "Please, let me in. I just need to get warm," she said with difficulty. "Come in," Jessica said softly, sensing that the woman was in genuine need of help. Jessica offered her a steaming cup of tea and a slice of pie. Once the woman had warmed up a bit, Jessica asked, "What brought you here?" "We're having a party, but you're welcome to rest here for a bit if you need to." The woman looked at Jessica intently and finally said, "Today is your husband's birthday. Allow me to congratulate him." Jessica led the woman into the living room where the party was in full swing. The guests initially exchanged confused looks, but soon accepted her as part of the evening's surprise. The woman took a microphone in her hands. "Michael, I wish you happiness and success," she began, but her tone suddenly became sharp. "But remember, you can't escape the past. It's still following you." Michael's hands started trembling. Jessica looked at her husband and could tell those words struck him deeply. But why? Who was this woman, and what did she mean? The festive buzz in the room immediately went silent. The guests exchanged uneasy glances while the woman stepped away, as if nothing unusual had occurred. Michael, coming out of his frozen state, abruptly stood up from the table and hurried after her. But she had already left the house. "What was that?" Jessica exclaimed, catching up to her husband at the door. "Michael, do you know this woman?" "No," he replied gruffly, avoiding eye contact. "Probably some crazy person. I have no idea how she even got in here." Jessica could feel he was hiding something. Her hands were trembling, and she noticed a shadow of fear in Michael's eyes. "You've never looked like this, not even in the hardest situations," she thought. But she decided not to push him further. Instead, she turned to the security guards. "How could you let a stranger into the house?" she asked firmly. The guards shrugged, replying, "She came in through the service entrance." "We thought she was someone from the staff, Miss Jessica." Their explanations didn't ease her mind, but this wasn't the time to start an investigation. Jessica returned to the living room, trying to distract the guests, who were beginning to grow restless. "Well, surprises always add a little spice to the party," she said with a smile, pouring champagne into glasses. The guests chuckled and gradually resumed celebrating, but Jessica's thoughts remained preoccupied with the strange woman. "Listen," she began, sitting down across from Michael later that evening. If this is someone from your past, you can tell me. We're family. Michael, as if he had already prepared a response, scoffed. Family, Jessica? That was just some old lady. Why are you even giving this so much attention? Forget it. It's not worth worrying about. But Jessica couldn't forget. That night, she lay awake, tuned into a nagging feeling as if her instincts were warning her. Who was that woman? What connects her to Michael? The questions wouldn't let her rest. Her intuition told her something had shifted within their family, and this was only the beginning. A week passed since that strange evening. Life seemed to return to normal, but Jessica's unease hadn't gone away. Michael tried to act as if nothing had happened, but his behavior grew more distant. He stayed late at the office, avoided personal conversations, and seemed to watch Jessica with suspicion. He's hiding something, Jessica thought, masking her suspicions. While she resolved not to pressure him, her determination to uncover the truth was growing. One afternoon on her way back from the store, Jessica spotted a familiar figure standing on the corner. It was the same elderly woman whose strange appearance had disrupted Michael's birthday celebration. She stood by a bus stop, hunched over as if unsure where she was going. This is my chance, Jessica thought. She parked her car, stepped out, and walked toward the woman. Hello, she said as she approached. The woman raised her head, a look of recognition flash across her face. You're Michael's wife, she said softly. Yes, Jessica replied. Who are you, and what did you want to tell my husband? The woman looked at her with pity. It's not your fault, my dear, but you need to know the truth. She gestured to the bench and invited Jessica to sit beside her. My name is Constance, she began. Many years ago, I was a nanny for a boy named Michael. His adoptive parents were good people, but the boy was different. Jessica frowned. What do you mean? Constance sighed. I watched him grow up. Even as a child, he showed a dark side, threatening, manipulating. She paused for a moment, then looked directly into Jessica's eyes. When Michael was 12, his adoptive parents died in a house fire. Everyone thought it was an accident, but I knew the truth. It was him. He turned on the gas and left the house. Jessica felt her heart clench. That's impossible, she murmured, unable to believe what she was hearing. I didn't want to tell you, Constance continued, but I saw him recently on the street and realized I had to warn you. This man is dangerous and you need to be careful, especially now that you're expecting a child. Jessica froze. She hadn't told anyone about her pregnancy, and now this stranger knew. She couldn't just dismiss what she'd heard as a lie. If you're right, why did you come only now? Jessica asked, trying to remain calm. Because I hoped he had changed, Constance replied. But seeing him again made me realize, no, he's the same. You need to be prepared for anything. Jessica didn't respond. Her mind was racing. Constance's words seemed absurd, but something inside told her there was truth to the story. She returned to her car, drove a few blocks, and parked at the curb. Her hands trembled. If everything Constance said is true, she's living with a stranger, Jessica concluded. That evening, Jessica sat in the kitchen, staring out of the window absent-mindedly. She tried to find a logical explanation for what she had heard, but each new thought only raised more questions. Michael returned home later than usual, looking tired, but he noticed that Jessica seemed preoccupied. Did something happen? He asked, tossing his keys on the table. Oh, it's nothing, she said, trying to sound casual. You've been tense lately, he added, gazing intently. To be honest, I just have a lot on my mind about the future, Jessica began, carefully choosing her words. I'm thinking about what it will be like when the baby arrives. Michael froze. He seemed taken aback by this announcement. You're pregnant? He asked. and there was no joy in his voice, only tension. Jessica nodded. "I wanted to tell you earlier, but couldn't find the right moment." "That's unexpected," Michael said, trying to mask his emotions. "But that's good news. You know how much I love children." She nodded, but her gaze remained wary and unnatural. Jessica decided not to bring up Constance, to avoid revealing her suspicions too soon, but her doubts only grew stronger. The next day, Jessica decided to verify the words of the elderly woman. She started by searching the internet for news about the fire from years ago. It took her a while to find the right information, but after a few hours, she stumbled upon an article about the tragedy at the Blake's home. The fire claimed the lives of the Blake couple. According to the investigation, the tragedy was caused by a gas leak, the note said. Jessica clenched her fists. It could be a coincidence, but her intuition told her it was connected to Michael. Her thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It was Constance. "I wanted to check on you," she gently began. "You told the truth," Jessica said instead of a greeting. "I found news about the fire, but I need more evidence." Constance paused for a moment, then replied, "If you really want to know everything, I can show you a place. There, you will find answers." "Where?" Jessica asked. "In the house of his adoptive parents. It's been empty for years now. If you're ready, I can take you there." Jessica hesitated, then nodded. "All right. I want to know the truth." That night, sleep eluded her. Her thoughts darted between memories of happy moments with Michael and the fear of what she might discover. But now, with a child on the way, she had to know if it was safe to stay with him. The next morning, Jessica met Constance at the bus stop. "Are you sure you want to see this?" Constance asked before they set off. "I have to," Jessica replied firmly. "If he's hiding something, I need to know the truth to protect myself and the child." The journey was long. Constance spoke of the house where Michael's family had once lived. She described them as kind, caring people who sincerely wanted to give the boy a chance at a normal life. But Michael, she said, had shown cruelty and manipulative tendencies from an early age. When they finally arrived at the old house, Jessica felt her heart tighten. The house appeared abandoned, its windows boarded up and the door blanketed in dust. Constance carefully opened the door and they went inside. "This place is just the way I remember it," the old woman whispered, leading Jessica down the hallway. "This was the kitchen where it all happened," she said. Jessica paused by the gas stove. The walls bore soot stains, and the air was thick with a musty smell. Constance pointed to an old metal box in the corner. "This is what I wanted to show you." Jessica opened it and found an old notebook, photographs, and a few letters. A letter from Michael's adoptive parents stood out. They described how he had threatened them when he wasn't obeyed. One of the last sentences read, "We fear for our lives, but hope that love will change him." Jessica's hands trembled as she whispered, "This can't be." "Now you understand who you're dealing with," Constance asked quietly. "He can be charming, but inside, he's dangerous." As they returned home, Jessica remained silent, processing all she had learned. Constance advised her to be cautious and not to reveal that she knew anything. When Jessica arrived home, Michael was waiting. He looked anxious. "Where were you all day?" he asked with barely concealed irritation. "Just errands," Jessica replied calmly, trying not to reveal her agitation. Michael scrutinized her as if trying to figure out what was going on. "If you have questions, you can ask me," he said, though an underlying threat was in his voice. Jessica smiled, but her gaze was steady. "I'll ask when I'm ready." That night, she hid the documents in a safe place. Her love for Michael, once unwavering, began turning into the realization that the man she lived with was a stranger. She knew she needed to tread cautiously because now it wasn't just her at risk, but also her child. After uncovering the truth, Jessica's world was turned upside down. She tried to act as usual, but the tension between her and Michael grew more palpable. She knew, sooner or later, he would notice her detachment. To be certain in her actions, Jessica sought help from her father, a man influential and experienced in such situations. She decided to tell him the whole truth. "Dad," Jessica began, sitting across from him in his office, "I need your help. Michael, he isn't who he seems." Her father, normally calm and collected, furrowed his brow. "What do you mean? What's happened?" She told him about Constance, the house of Michael's adoptive parents, and the journals she discovered. Her father was silent for a long time, twirling a pen on the table. "Are you sure about what you're saying?" he finally asked. "Yes," Jessica replied firmly. "I can't be with him any longer. I want a divorce." Though her father was shocked, he supported her. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "We'll do whatever it takes to protect you and the child. I'll handle the paperwork and hire the best attorneys." Returning home, Jessica prepared for a conversation with Michael. Her plan was clear: to announce the divorce while avoiding direct confrontation. But Michael seemed ready for her decision. "You've been thinking too much lately," he said over dinner, his voice suspiciously even. "Care to share?" Jessica gathered all her resolve and replied, "Yes, I do. Michael, I can't stay with you any longer. I want a divorce." His face immediately changed. His eyes narrowed and his hands clenched into fists. "Are you kidding?" he asked, though it was clear that humor was the last thing on his mind. "No, I'm not," she said calmly. "I've made this decision for myself and the child." "You think I'll let you leave just like that?" His voice became menacing. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Oh, I've just realized that," Jessica answered, "and that's precisely why I'm leaving." Michael abruptly stood up, but at that moment Jessica's father walked into the house. "You won't hurt her," he said calmly. "I'll make sure she's safe." Michael realized there was nothing he could do at the moment and angrily retreated. "You're making a mistake, Jessica. You'll regret this," he said as he headed towards the door. When he left, Jessica felt the tension dissipate. She knew she had made the right choice, but there was a difficult road ahead. She was grateful to herself for confiding in her father and not facing the situation alone. Now, she focused on the future. She had her father, Constance, and an unborn child, for whom it was worth starting anew. After Michael left, the house was filled with silence, but it was the kind of peace Jessica had long desired. Instead of constant tension and hidden fear, she felt relief. Constance, as promised, stayed close by, supporting her in everything. "He won't give up that easily," Constance said one evening while discussing future plans. "People like Michael always try to regain control. You must be prepared." Jessica nodded. She knew Constance was right, but her resolve was unshakable. Together with her father, she began the divorce process and the protection of her rights to the house and the future child. Her father, as always, acted confidently and without unnecessary words. "Now that Michael is no longer around, you can focus on the baby," he said, encouraging her. Slowly but surely, her life was getting back on track. Jessica returned to her hobbies, began spending more time outdoors, and even signed up for classes for expectant mothers. One day, a car pulled up to her house. Jessica looked out the window and saw a government investigator. This investigator was handling the case against Michael, who had falsely accused Constance. He smiled when he saw her. "Hello, Jessica," he said, taking off his hat. "I wanted to check how you're doing. Is everything all right?" "Yes, thank you," Jessica replied, inviting him inside. She felt she could trust this man. During their conversation, the investigator informed her that Michael was now under investigation and his crimes were being thoroughly examined. "He won't be able to harm you," he said. Jessica felt genuine relief for the first time in a long time. The young man introduced himself as James. His sincerity and concern for her safety touched Jessica, and a bond formed between them that was deeper than just friendship. Constance watched their interactions with a smile. "James is a good man. Perhaps this is your chance to start anew," she said one day. Initially, Jessica brushed off her words, but over time she began to notice how integral James was becoming to her life. He supported her in everything, helped with the paperwork, and always found time to check on her well-being. Several months later, Jessica felt her heart was opening up to love once again. However, she decided to build a relationship based on trust and honesty. Her life had changed. It was calm, confident, and filled with the joy of expecting a child. Michael was a part of the past, and the future promised to be bright. Time passed, and Jessica's life gradually gained clarity. Her divorce from Michael was officially finalized. The court ruled that she would keep the house she lived in and all her savings. Michael no longer had the right to approach her or her future child. Constance remained a faithful companion, assisting Jessica with preparations for the baby's arrival, teaching her little tricks only an experienced nanny would know. Jessica felt much more at ease and secure with this woman by her side. One of the main pillars of her new life was James. He continued to visit her, bringing warmth and confidence. Over the months, he became more than just a friend. He became someone Jessica could fully trust. One evening, as Jessica was relaxing after another doctor's appointment, James visited her with a bouquet of flowers. "I wanted to congratulate you. You have a new chapter in your life coming up soon," he said, handing her the bouquet. Jessica smiled as she accepted the flowers. "Thank you, James. You're always so thoughtful." He sat across from her, and after a brief pause, he said, "Jessica, there's something I wanted to tell you. You are a very strong woman. What you've been through deserves respect, but I want to be there for you, not just as a friend." Her heart fluttered. She had long suspected James felt more than friendship for her, but this was the first time he had voiced it. "I won't rush you," he continued. "Just know that I'm here and ready to be a part of your life if you want me to." Jessica looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "James, I want to try too. But I want things to go slowly, step by step, for the sake of the child and for us." He smiled. "As you wish. The most important thing is your happiness." Since then, James began visiting more often. He helped with repairs, prepared the nursery with Jessica, and even read books on parenting. Their bond, growing stronger with each day, deepened. When the baby was born, James was the first to hold him after Jessica, of course. "His name is Alex," she said, looking at the infant. "I hope he grows up in a home where there's only love." A year later, Jessica and James got married. The wedding was small, just for close family, but filled with genuine emotions. Constance, of course, remained by their side, now as a full-fledged family member. Jessica's life changed completely. She left behind the pain and fear and opened a new chapter, one of love, trust, and genuine happiness. Jessica took a brave step, leaving the past behind and starting anew for herself and her child. Did you enjoy this story? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to not miss new releases. See you soon.